Hey guys, Miss Paraso here. We didn't spend a lot of time on the 3D shapes in class, so I just wanted to take a moment. And if you didn't feel like you fully understood it, to go through these 6 problems here together, I'm going to encourage you to pause the video and see if you can figure it out on your own, but feel free to watch along with me. All right, so I've gone ahead and gotten a couple highlighters to help me out. You're going to want a calculator there and all that. All right, let's dive in. Okay, so in this one, it's asking us to find the value of x and y in the rectangular prism. So here's the y value. And when we're doing that, we really want to make sure that it's hard in 3D shapes to kind of see all of the shapes, but we can see right here that that y value, all right, if I were to just take that piece out, where's that y value coming from? Right? This is, let's call this A, B, C, and D. So that's rectangle. That's the base of this rectangular prism. And what's happening is that that y value is the diagonal of that base. Okay? And we can see that that side is 7, this side is 3, so that side is also 3. And we know that it's a rectangular base. 1, it tells us it's a rectangular prism. And 2, it's already got the right angle built in for us. So we can go ahead and use the Pythagorean theorem to help us find the value of y. So we're going to go ahead and do 3 squared plus 7 squared, and that's going to give us y squared. So we get 9 plus 49, so that's 58 is y squared, but we want the value of y, so that's going to be the square root of 58. And it does say that we're allowed to estimate to the nearest tenth, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So it's approximately 7.6 for the value of y. Okay. Well, then we want the value of x. So now we're going from this flat dimension here to a more vertical position. And if we see this diagonal, let's go ahead and label this top up here. Let's call this point D. This diagonal is going from point D to point B. So it's going from the back of the prism to the front of the prism. And if we pay attention, we can see, so if we kind of try to connect the lines, this point, then it goes down to here to this point. And this point, well, that doesn't help us here. So if we wanted to close this shape, we would actually need to close it on that y value, right? So if we kind of want to trace and look for a triangle when possible, right? And we know that it's going to form a right triangle, one, because it told us it's 90 degrees, but the height is always going to be perpendicular to that bottom base. So now we needed our y value to help us find that x value. So just to kind of sketch that off to the side, to kind of keep the same idea, right? Oh, that's D. I should make that an E. I just noticed that. I forgot that I already had a point D down here. Okay, so this is point D, this is point E, and this is point B. So from E to B is X, and from D to B is Y, and from E to D, well, that's the same as this length right here, so that's 6. So I need that Y value to go in here, and since I have that, you have 2 options. You could take the radical, or you could just use the estimated. Let me focus that for a second. It might go blurry on you. And there we go. Okay, a little bit better. But it really shouldn't matter. You'll get more precision if you keep it in radical form. So just to show you what I'm talking about, we got the y value is square root of 58, but we need to square that. And then we're going to square the 6, and that's going to give us x squared. Well, remember, radical 58, any radical squared is going to just be itself. And if you want me to just prove it to you, right, we're going to do the second square root, 58, close those oh, wrong mode here. Got to get out of there. Close the parentheses. And then I'm going to square it. Wrong button. Helps if you help it, okay? And we can see that we get 58. All right. So we could also have done it square root 58 times, because that's what it means. And again, we get 58. So anytime you square a radical, it's the inverse operation. So it's just going to be the number underneath. Okay. And then 58 plus 36 is 94. And we're going to get the square root of 94 to be our x value. And then let's go ahead and estimate that to the nearest tenth. And we get x is approximately 9.7. Right? So that's kind of the idea, is that yeah, we're working with 3D shapes, but what we really want to do is we want to be hunting for how can we use a two-dimensional shape and break up our 3D shapes into the parts that we know and understand and have that work for us. Okay? So now that you kind of see that, number one, I'm going to skip over to number three. Number one and three are pretty much the same. The only difference is, again, we're dealing with a rectangular prism, right? They both had rectangular prisms, and we are trying to find a diagonal. So in number one, though, all of the foundations and like the guidelines were kind of given to you. Whereas here, so I'm going to go ahead and label some points, the corners, just to make it easier to talk about. All right, so it looks like my diagonal is going from point E to point A. So it's crossing those lines. And so if I wanted to continue to try to make this a triangle, like it doesn't work that way. I have to actually go down from E to C, right? That's the other side of that triangle. All right. That makes sense in this case. Like that's going to kind of like, could I go this way? Yes, I could, but then I've got to draw another diagonal going this way. So that's not going to be helpful for me. So what I want to go ahead and do is I've got these two sides. Well, the only way to kind of complete this to get a full-on 90-degree angle that I know it's 90. Well, here's 90. These make 90-degree angles no matter which way you kind of angle that line. So if I draw that in, now I've got myself a right triangle. And so that's kind of the idea of where we want to go with this, is that now, okay, I need this side length and this one to find this one. Well, this one I know. That's 6. It told me it was 6. Okay, but this one I don't. Well, remember what we did in the first problem. Okay, this line is going from A to C. Well, let's separate out that shape. A, B, C, D, and A to B is 2, C to B is 3, and then I drew in a line from A to C. Well, I know it's a rectangular prism, so I know that this angle right here is a rectangle. So now I can use what I know about Pythagorean theorem to help me find this missing side, right? So if I did that, 2 squared plus 3 squared, that's 4 plus 9 is 13. So that would be this distance here squared. So that means this is the square root of 13. So now for this one, I'm actually going to leave it in radical form just to show you that we'll still get to the same answer. So that means that this length right here is square root of 13. So now let's focus on this triangle that I have here. So here's E, that's C, and that's A. So from A to C is the square root of 13. From E to C is 6. And we're trying to find that diagonal. So now I want to square both of those sides. 6 squared plus the square root of 13 squared equals D squared. And again, remember, the reason I'm leaving it as a radical, I could estimate to the nearest tenth if I wanted to. But when you square radical, it's the most precise way, and I don't have to worry about decimals and then my estimation. It's just going to undo that. Okay, so then 36 plus 13 is 49. So D squared is 49, and we actually find out that the diagonal length is actually an integer. It is a perfect square. Okay, so that's the idea. So go ahead and I encourage you to pause the video and just kind of take a look. And then what I'll do is I'm just going to come back and I'm going to just try to show you all the different places where you could have seen your triangles. The answer key for this is in your OneNote, and you can find it there to help you out. So go ahead and pause the video and kind of highlight your triangles in 2, 4, 5, and 6, and kind of come up with a plan about how are you going to do that. Okay? All right, so here's triangle 2. And again, I just went ahead and highlighted the triangle that I saw. And then you need to use your reasoning to help you kind of figure out all the missing parts. Like, we don't have this length, but we know that it's a square pyramid. And we know that the height of any 3D shape is always perpendicular and hits the center for the cone and the vertex. It's a right pyramid because of that right angle. So it's in the center. So because it's in the center, since this is 12, it's okay for me to go ahead and say that this is 6. And so now I've got 2 legs of my triangle, and the slant height is going to be my hypotenuse. All right. If you haven't already done number 4, pause the video and go ahead and try number 4. And then let's check in. All right, so number four, I was given here, well, any line along this plane, along this face of the prism is going to be 5. So I actually know that this side is 5. And then I don't know this height. Well, again, the height is going to actually bisect or cut in half this distance. So that means this is 4 and this is 4. And so now I have to find the height or the leg of that triangle. All right. When you're ready, let's go ahead and move on to number 5. All right, so again, here we have it. We were told that it's a square pyramid. So we're trying to actually find, our goal is to find this B value here, right? And what's the side length of the base? Well, we know that this is half of the base. So if I can find this value, all I have to do then is double it to find the B value. And then for our last one, this last one is just like the one right above it. So again, we want to know what the slant height is. So we can label that part as S. I don't like S's because they look like 5s, but that's what they were giving me. So, and we know this is 5. Now, be careful that, yes, this whole thing is 4, but that's why I encourage you to trace your triangle, because this whole distance is 4, so that means this is actually 2. And so now I have the 2 legs of my triangle, and I can find the slant height for that prism. All right, well, like I said, the answer key is available for those 4 problems on your OneNote. Let me know if you have any clarifying questions, and I will see you in class. Bye-bye.